Hi, so today I want to talk about my own personal experience between having a home birth and a hospital birth. I want to state here first that birth, the home birth was my own, and the hospital birth was my sister's hospital birth that just happened 3 days ago. And I'm still a little emotional about it, so if you see it here in this video, please just understand that we're talking about my sister and my niece here. But I had my son about 16 months ago, and it was a home birth, and it was very beautiful. And even though it was very painful and stressful in certain ways, because it took me about 3 days to actually deliver him, between from when I started feeling contractions up to the moment where I had him. And I will talk more about my experience as I compare and contrast to the hospital experience that my sister just went through 2 days ago. So I was there with her all throughout the process, and I can tell you that the differences are huge. So I think the biggest, most important experience difference between the hospital birth and the home birth is the fact that in the hospital birth you have too much medical intervention. And medical intervention may seem great in some cases, especially if it's a life and death situation. But if we're talking about a natural process, the process of giving birth, something that women have done for thousands of years, then medical intervention may or may not be so great. So she arrives at the hospital in the morning on the day 5 of February, and she's starting to feel contractions. Her water had broke, and as soon as she gets to the hospital, they start giving her pitocin, and pitocin makes contractions closer together. You start getting more contractions quicker, which speeds up the birthing process. She had her baby 24 hours later, actually about 30 hours later. She could have had this baby maybe 3 days later, like me, if she did not have pitocin. But pitocin speed things up. But my first question that I want to raise for you here, that maybe is pregnant and maybe is considering a home birth or a hospital birth, is the following: is really necessary to speed up the birth process? Or is it better to allow nature to take its course, even if it takes 3 days? Pitocin does speed things up, contractions get quicker sooner, but it also becomes very painful. So in order for you to be able to deal with the pain, then you take epidural, and that's just the way the norms are in the hospital. They give you a pitocin, and as soon as it starts hurting, they give you epidural, and one thing neutralizes the other. But the epidural at the same time makes the entire body, especially from the waist down, very numb. Okay, the epidural is given right in your back, and you just feel everything numb. So that being said, by making everything numb, it becomes harder for the woman to push. They don't feel those areas down there, and they don't necessarily know if they're pushing correctly. Does that happen in every case? No, it doesn't. But it happens in many, many cases, and many people end up not being able to have a normal birth at the hospital due to the fact that they couldn't push, or they become too tired, or by the time they learn how to push, the baby is already very stressed. So yeah, pitocin and epidurals can help speed up the process. But again, the question that I'm raising here is why is it so important to speed up the process? It's going to be painful, no doubts. But isn't the pain perhaps helping you die as a mother and become this whole new person? Birth is a rebirthing for the mother, no doubts about it. And it's a transcendental experience. And if you are drugged through the process, is it really going to be the most connected way to go through this? Also, another question that I want to raise here: do your own research and find out, is pitocin really good for the baby? Is the epidural really good for the baby? Are there any issues with having an epidural in the long term? Some women that have had epidurals, they say that they have this weird pain in the back where they got the epidural. I have heard that from many mothers. So start making your research and understand what are the consequences of Pitocin in yourself and what are the consequences of Pitocin in the baby, and the same thing for the epidural. So those are things to keep in mind. Also, what I think it's very interesting to consider too is that the way, so how Pitocin and epidurals cause a lot of mothers to end up having emergency C-sections. So I remember when I was pregnant, I had so many people saying that I was crazy that I decided to have a home birth, because their main problem is, Ariel, what if there is any emergencies? How are you going to deal with the emergencies? So I brought those questions up to my midwife, and she would say, Ariel, don't worry. If that is an emergency, we will know. I'm going to be monitoring everything. And if that is an emergency, we already have a doctor and a hospital in which we can just let them know that we have an emergency and we could just take you to the hospital. And this is the way it goes. And I was like, okay. And that's basically what a midwife says, which is great for us who just want to feel safe somehow. But at the same time, what we got to consider is the numbers. The numbers don't lie. When you go to the hospital and you're planning to have a normal birth, 33% of the times the woman end up having a C-section. 33% of the time. That's a lot of percentage there. Whereas for a midwife, whenever she's delivering babies at home, the chances of becoming a C-section is about 2%. So how is it possible that a home birth ends up having a 2% emergency C-section rate versus a hospital having about a 33% emergency C-section rate? I believe that it has to do with that medical intervention. All the Pitocin speeding things up, making the mother more tired than they could right at the beginning of the journey, instead of waiting for the journey to be what it is. Then you take the epidural to slow things down. Then you can't slow things down. I mean, yeah, it does slow down birth, but also takes the pain away, but at the same time makes you numb. And then perhaps if a mother have never had a baby, if it's their firstborn especially, it becomes harder for them to push. They simply don't feel anything down there. So, and that is also this idea of, okay, if the mother is very tired, if she's just saying that she can't do it anymore, let's just go for plan B, which is the C-section. The difference is, when I was at home and when I said I can't do this any longer, please take me to the hospital, this is so painful, what a horrible decision I have made. When that happened to me, I had no other option. The midwife looked at me and she said, well, if you're gonna go to the hospital, we can take you, no big deal, but it's going to be very cold over there, because I was already freezing. You get a lot of chills whenever you're in labor. And for that reason, I wanted to spend a lot of time in my bathtub. And as soon as she said it's going to be cold, I just decided that that was the time, and I just had that baby. So when you don't have an option per se to have a C-section, you end up doing what you got to do to have the baby. And even if it does get to be an emergency, you can then just run to the hospital and do what you got to do, right? But the question that I'm asking here that I want to go back to is, why 33% emergency C-section rate at the hospital versus 2% at home births? And it goes back to all the drugs and all the fact that the doctors get tired and they just want to go to plan B. And oftentimes, I have seen this several times, and this is a conversation I had with my midwife and a conversation I had with a doula too, is they might blame, oh, the baby, we just want to protect the baby, we don't want the baby to suffer. But this is a common comeback from the doctor as an excuse to doing a C-section. I know that sounds terrible, and I hope that you don't get upset with me, especially if you've been through this situation, okay? I have done my research and I have talked to the people in this industry before making this video. Of course, you don't have to take my word as the correct word. You can do your own research and put your experience a little bit aside and really research what this is all about. So then you have that. That was one of the biggest differences I found between having a home birth and having a hospital birth. But aside from that, what else did I see that I thought was a huge difference and that could have been different? The other thing I saw that I think it could have been very different is the way the doctor pulls the baby out of the vagina. Don't want to be too picky here, but again, you can research and figure it out. The way the doctor pulls the baby can break the neck, can be a little bit more intrusive. The baby is very sensitive. All the bones and the muscles, they're not all close together. So the way you pull the baby from the vagina can make a huge difference. And I thought that wasn't that gentle. And that's something that, again, doctors, and I think they're so tired, they're just going through the system. They deliver so many babies a day. For them, it's not a magical experience. It's just, very commercial in a way. So they just pull the baby. And then they pull the baby. That's the case of my sister. That's what I saw. I didn't like the way she pulled the baby. And she puts the baby in the mother's chest. That's a beautiful moment. That was lovely. I have nothing to complain about that. But that only lasted 1 minute. Within 1 minute, the doctor cuts the umbilical cord and takes the baby to this other station where there is a bunch of light in front of the baby. So this baby was in the womb, everything was dark, everything was cozy, always there with the mama, right? In this case, my niece and her mama. And then all of a sudden that baby spends 1 minute in the mama's chest and goes straight to the station where there's a bunch of light on top of those baby eyes. And there I am as an auntie freaking out, covering those baby eyes and saying, do you really need these lights on the baby? Do you really need to do this right now? Why isn't the baby with the mother? Can't you see that this baby has a bunch of light inside on top of their eyes? Can you please stop? And I'm covering the baby's eyes and just talking to my niece and saying, don't worry, baby, I'm here. It's Auntie Ariel. I'm right here. It's all okay. And the baby is crying. She's measuring the head and she's making sure that she's putting a diaper. And then the nurse looks at me and she says, well, we gotta make sure we put a diaper so the baby doesn't pee. I was like, who cares if the baby pees? 5 minutes later, she gives the baby back to the mother. Does it really need to be so quick? This all examination in the baby? Does it really need to be this way? I remember when I had my baby, I actually pulled the baby out of my vagina myself, put that baby in my chest. Everybody stayed in silence and we just enjoyed that moment. So and I forgot to say something very important. And within that minute that the mother was holding the baby before sending the baby to the station, that same moment. So imagine, my sister just had her baby. She just saw her baby for the first time. She was in her arms. Then there is 2 nurses wiping the baby's vernix out at the same time. No respect for the moment. Just 2 nurses wiping the vernix out. If you don't know, and again, do your research, don't take my word as the right word, that the vernix protects the skin of the baby, and it's supposed to stay in the baby's skin for a few hours after the baby is born. So the baby is in one planet, and it's a different planet, and it's right there surviving well. Then the baby comes into a different planet. The coding helps the baby in so many ways, but there's no sensibility towards it. There's just a nurse wiping the vernix out like they are cleaning a pen. There is no sensibility either. So that all happened 1 minute. They put the baby under a light, then bring the baby back to the mother. Within that minute too, right before taking the baby into the station, the doctor cuts the umbilical cord. So let's recap here. Pulls the baby out in a not very gentle way. Give the baby to the mama. Mama is very excited to see the baby. The umbilical cord is still there for that full first minute. While that full first minute is happening, there's somebody wiping the baby's vernix out. No privacy between mom and baby. Then once that happens, doctor cuts the umbilical cord, baby goes under the station, bunch of lights in the baby is being checked in many ways, making sure they put a diaper on because they're fearful of pee. Then they bring the baby back to the mother. This may all seem like, for you perhaps, details that don't really matter, details that are not very important. But if you dig a little deeper on why it's good to to keep the umbilical cord for a little longer, you're going to understand why I'm upset about this. If you dig a little deep on why it's important to keep the vernix into the baby's skin for a little longer, you're going to understand why I'm making a video about this. So about the umbilical cord, just so you know, the placenta is connected to the umbilical cord is connected to the baby. The placenta has a lot of different vitamins, minerals, blood that all goes down to the umbilical cord to the baby. Okay, so according to my midwife and according to many other midwives, it's very important to allow the umbilical cord to stop pulsating prior to cutting it. And oftentimes it takes over a minute for that to happen. So this was my sister's experience, and after that, you know, she holds the baby after the 5 minutes in the station, she's okay, the baby's there. Baby's not really eating. Baby was crying when it was taken away from the mother. Now baby's starting to relax. There's a bunch of nurses coming in and out. Some of them are having side conversations about something quite stupid that doesn't really matter. And there is just side conversation happening. Then the climax of the story is not, it's okay, it's all beautiful, we all relieved. I'm so happy to meet my niece, her husband's so happy that all is done. My parents already text them at this time, they're all so happy. My sister is happy to meet her baby. So hopefully all those details that I said in the grand scheme of things, they really won't make any difference in the well-being of my sister and the well-being of the baby. I really hope not, because we were talking about my sister and my niece here. But then let me tell you the experience that I had at home. I had a 3 days birth. It was a very difficult thing I did because like my sister's doctor look at me when she meets me at the hospital, she says, "Are you the heroine who had the baby at home?" I don't need to be seen as a heroine. I'm just a human being having a human experience, and this is a very natural thing. Or have you forgot about this because you live in this very commercial space and where you factory babies out of the factory? I don't even know if this word is correct one in English, but I'm doing my best here. So anyhow, I had my baby at home. It was a long labor, about 3 days. And there was moments that I thought, what am I doing? Why am I not going to the hospital? This is crazy. But I made it through, and just like me, does 98% of the people, okay? Once I had the baby, I pulled that baby out, I put the baby in my chest, my son Jasper, and everybody was in silence and in awe for that moment. There was magic in the air. It's like time stopped. And the colors and everything was just more beautiful. And that full hour I will never forget. It was so special for my husband, for them. Everybody was just there. It's like in the Bible when Jesus is born, there is all those people around and there's a light, and it feels like that. The baby stayed in my chest for a while. I took the placenta out after about 30 minutes holding my baby. Then I gave the baby to my husband, who was right next to me. I pulled the placenta out. Then my husband takes the baby, the midwife takes the placenta, I take a little shower. I'm already feeling much better. You know, it was very hard throughout, but after that baby's out, I'm feeling much better. I have no drugs, there's nothing, I can walk. So I wash myself out and I go to the bed. My husband follows me and the midwife follows me with the placenta. That baby stays in my chest for a little bit more. Then the baby goes into the bed. My husband cuts the placenta about 1 hour after I had that baby. Then we use the placenta to make placenta pills that I take for about 2 months after I had my baby, and it helps with the hormones, and it helps with maybe the baby blues that some people may feel a little sad because of the hormonal changes that's happening postpartum. So you can also go and look for placenta pills and its benefits if you like. And after that, you know, it was just bliss. The entire time was just bliss. We were all so blissful. And then the baby latches right away. He latches right away. And after that, everybody pretty much leaves. She stitched me out a little bit, which is just due to the fact that when I decided that the baby was ready to come, I just pushed with everything I could. And then we all went to sleep in the bed, my husband, my newborn baby, and I. And that was the first night Jasper slept all throughout the night. For the next 6 months after, but it was very beautiful, and we were already at home. I was already eating my food. You didn't have to go through anything. You didn't have to get into a car. It was just we didn't have to deal with anybody. Next day, the midwife comes, the doula comes, so it's a very different experience. After the baby's born, that magic hour is something that all the doulas and all the midwives work for. They say that that's this, in the Ayurveda they call it the magic hour. It's just that you have this magical moment. It's like I said, time stops and everything is just so beautiful. And everybody who's attending to that birth get to experience that. I unfortunately did not experience that with my sister at the hospital due to the fact that it was just like a commercial thing, you know, side conversations between nurses, a lot of people coming in and out. And that's why I'm making this video. That just happened 2 days ago. I'm still emotional about it. And I just wanted you to know and make your own research on what would be best for you. And if you are gonna have a hospital birth, you know what to ask for. If you don't want the vernix to be out of the baby and wiped out of the baby, say no. If you don't want the baby to get out of your chest for the first 30 minutes to be checked, deny that. If you want to have the umbilical cord there for 30 minutes, ask for it. You got to ask for it if you want any of that, okay? And the doctors may dismiss as something silly, and because we give doctors so much credit, we may say, okay, but do your research so you are sure of what you're fighting for, okay? Those little things may not make any difference, but it also may make a world of difference. We don't know. But every little seed we plant with our babies now can make a world of difference of who they are as adults, okay? Big kiss.